Welcome to Hard Talk from Budapest. I'm Stephen Sackur. Hungary is a relatively small country in the heart of Europe. It is led by a nationalist populist Prime Minister, Viktor Orbán, who believes his opposition to immigration, his defense of so-called Christian values, can transform not just Hungary, but the whole of the European Union. My guest is Hungary's Foreign Minister, Péter Szijjártó. Can Orbanism win Europe's battle of ideas? Péter Szijjártó, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you very much for the invitation again.
What's fascinating about being in Budapest right now is that in the last couple of days, hundreds of huge posters have gone up around this city depicting George Soros, the American financier, next to Jean-Claude Juncker, the president of the EU Commission. And the message is that the European Union, presumably in association with Soros, is threatening the security of Hungary. Why does your country feel the need to indulge in this black propaganda?
Well, first of all, this is an election campaign, so you shouldn't be surprised of posters appearing on public areas.
But this has nothing to do with elections, because it's funded by the Hungarian government. It doesn't have any party label on it. It's simply a message from the government to your people.
We think that it is absolutely the obligation of a state, of a government, to inform their citizens about developments which have an impact on their country, especially if there's an impact on their security, on their everyday life. You know, the government has this obligation, and we inform the people about these issues. And to answer the substance of your question as well, you know, George Soros definitely has a totally different vision about the future of Europe and about the future of Hungary compared to what we have. That had been announced by him many times. It's absolutely open, it's public, and we have a strong, let's say, a heavy debate with him on this issue.
Let's deal with this, if I may, let's deal with this.
Just one sentence, and if he is allowed to go open with his criticism, with his different vision, with his intention to throw out this government, my question is why we Hungarians, why we the government shouldn't have the right to enter into this debate and go public as well.
Let's deal with this piece by piece. First, you tell me that your government has a duty to inform. I would not imagine that you feel your government has a duty or indeed a right to lie. But the information provided both in this poster and the Facebook and social media posts which your government has put up about the poster, they're full of lies.
Can you give me concrete issues? Because fighting the perception is not my job.
Well, for example, your Facebook and social media posts say that the EU is intent upon weakening border protection.
Yes, this is the case. This
Absolutely,
is the case.
Categorically not the case,
yeah,
according to a host of EU officials.
No, but they are lying. They are lying. They are lying because, look, remember back 2015 and the time since 2015. What was the major debate? Whether Hungary made it right or not to seal off the green border. Whether Hungary made it right or not to build up a fence and make it impossible for illegal migrants to go across the border. Can you give me an example, just one example, on a positive comment coming from European politicians or European media? No, everybody was attacking it. And the European Commission was taking the lead in that, to attack Hungary to protect its border. Then my question is, who is lying? They are lying because they wanted to weaken our capacity to protect our border. They still want to weaken our capacities because they want Frontex to protect the borders. You know what Frontex is? Frontex is a travel agency. It's not a border protection agency. They would basically like to take away parts of the rights of the sovereign nation states to protect their own borders. But our position is that protection of the border is a national obligation.
Here's another one. You claim that the EU is eager to ease access to migrant visas.
Yeah.
Again, categorically untrue according to all of the detailed presentations from EU officials.
No,
they say, and I'm quoting the Vice President of the Commission, you are living in a parallel universe.
They are living in a parallel universe. They should listen to people, you know? They should listen to people and they should stop lying. Because the whole migration policy of the European Commission in the last years was just about how to invite migrants to this continent.
One other aspect of this campaign...
In Hungary, people have decided many times.
One other aspect of your campaign that I need to address, and that is this association of George Soros with Jean-Claude Juncker, the clear implication of your message being that somehow Soros is pulling the levers of the European Union. There's a direct association, and in the words of your own Prime Minister, Soros is in control of a conspiracy to lure migrants into Europe. There is not a secret. One shred of evidence to support that contention.
I mean, let's look at this issue on a factual basis instead of emotions, because I think it's very important to keep all debates about the future of EU on a factual basis, because then we have a then we have a hope to come to a conclusion.
Explain to me factually how Jean-Claude Juncker is a puppet of George Soros.
George Soros has put out his plan and vision about the future of European Union quite many times, openly. You can look at it on the internet, in any other publication.
That's not what I'm asking you about. I'm asking for specific evidence.
No, he put out his plan. Look at what was included in his plan. How many migrants should be brought into the European Union, how much it wouldn't be significant that there are borders and national identities, how much the border protection capacities should be pushed back. And look at the policy of European Commission since 2015, exactly carrying out those points which have been included in the plan of George Soros. My question is,
that's not evidence, and you know it. It is. In your view, that's evidence,
absolutely.
Is it?
It has
that's
been
absurd.
No, this is the evidence. It has been written by George Soros, and that has been completed by the European Commission. My question is, why European commissioners have received George Soros 21 times during the last years without any kind of public announcement afterwards?
There's no evidence. You've presented not a shred of evidence that George Soros is controlling the EU immigration policy.
Please compare what George Soros has
just because Soros says things and just because the EU does things is not a causal relationship.
And what if they are the same? And they are the same.
First of all, of course, they're not the same. But even if they were the same, that's not evidence. I mean, that's just not evidence.
Yeah, it is. You think it's not an evidence, we do think it's an evidence. I respect your position, and I expect you to respect mine as well. It has been exactly the same migration policy carried out by the European Union, which has been written in the Soros plan. That's the fact.
You ask to be judged on what happens in this country. You are being judged by what happens in this country. The European Parliament has judged you, and last September it voted to begin Article 7 punitive actions against Hungary inside the EU because of your systemic abuse of EU norms and values. That's a judgment.
There were 69 points in this report, 69, out of which 13 has already been agreed by the government and by the European Commission back in 2011, 12 and 13. So we can consider them closed. Then there were 19 points about which we have a constant dialogue with the European Commission, which is the normal way of resolving different approaches about issues in the EU. And there were 37 points which were simple, systematic, qualified lies about my country, one by one. I was there twice in the Libe Commission. I have answered to all these questions. We have handed out a more than 100-pager leaflet, point by point, going through why those are lies and why those are not true about my country.
We can go through some of them if you like,
please,
which are clearly not lies. For example, the Central European University has been denied the ability to hand out US degrees. It is therefore forced to move to Vienna. Michael Ignatieff, the rector of the university.
That's a big lie which you are echoing now. It's fake news. They are here. Go there, a couple of corners away.
I've spoken to the rector.
And are they here?
I've spoken to the rector,
But are they here in Budapest?
Michael Ignatieff.
But are they here? You found them, right? They are here. It's a lie that they moved. They are here.
It's not a lie that the headquarters is moved to Vienna.
They are
and
here.
that Michael Ignatieff is going to have to move to Vienna.
But they are here.
As he describes it, it is a tragedy for academic freedom, a tragedy for Hungary and for Europe. It proves, he says, that this government is ready to manipulate the law and democracy for its own purposes.
No, he lies. What is the situation? There's a law in Hungary on higher education, which applies to all higher education institutions exactly the same way. Exactly the same way. What does it say? It says that if you are a foreign-based university, you are allowed to issue a diploma of another country if you have a school in that given country. So suggesting that they had to move from Hungary is a lie, because they are here, they are issuing Hungarian diploma, they have all the accreditations which are necessary to operate in Hungary, and they can continue.
Is it also a lie?
The only thing they cannot do is they cannot issue US diploma, because they do not have a school in the US.
Is it also a lie that UN experts have been denied access to your transit zones on the border with Serbia, again flouting international norms and standards? Is that a lie?
The UN officials were here. They went to the border. They had the chance to look around. So I don't understand.
Were they denied access inside your transit zones? Yes or no?
I was not there. I don't know. What I know is
the answer is yes. The UN said quite simply we were denied access.
But we are a sovereign country, right? We are a sovereign country. There are laws and rights here whom to allow to have an access to where. And if you contradict the law, you cannot go there.
Nobody was contradicting the law. The only people contradicting the law, apparently, according to many independent sources, are your government flouting norms and procedures when it comes to the rights of would-be refugees seeking refugee status in Hungary itself. Marta Padavi of the Helsinki Committee, quote, the government consistently flouts international law when it comes to the treatment of migrants.
That's not true. It's not true. They are biased organizations financed by the Soros network. It's not true.
Are they one of these organizations which the state media here has described as mercenary Soros organizations?
I went to see the UN officials after these comments were made in Geneva, all of them. And I asked them, what's your questions? Why you do that? Why you write lies? And they refer to their own bureaucracy. One of them said that, sorry, I just arrived, I didn't know what was in the report, and all this kind of stuff. If anybody is open to any kind of dialogue, it's me and it's the government. I go to New York, I go to Geneva a little bit more often than I go home now, with some exaggeration, of course. And I'm always open. I'm always ready to talk to face about concrete issues. But putting out such kind of allegations and perceptions is just simply not fair.
The EU has also looked at systemic corruption and what has happened to EU funds over many years in this country. And those are all reasons why the European Union, the democratically elected Parliament of the European Union, has decided that Hungary must face Article 7 sanctions.
Well, what I can tell you about the democratically elected European Parliament is that they made a cheating during the voting. You know why? Because in all parliaments in the world, including the European Parliament, you have three options. You vote yes, vote no, and vote abstention. And the only way that they could create a two-thirds majority was that they took out abstentions from counting. Do you know that? Do you know that? Did you know that?
Isn't there a simple truth at the heart of Hungary?
Did you ask any time from European bureaucrats how it is possible that in a voting session you take abstentions out, totally contradicting the modus operandi in that parliament? What would you raise as a question if we had done if we had done so in Hungary? Double standards you apply always. We have to understand that there's a phenomenon that we are usually under attack by mainstream media and mainstream political elite in Europe. And it's very unusual that someone fights back, But we are not ready to take these accusations and allegations. And we will always fight back because we have to defend our country. You always question decisions here in Hungary. Look, we are a nation of freedom fighters. Do you think it would have been possible to win 7 elections in a row like we did in the last 10 years, all national, all regional, all European Parliament elections, if such kind of allegations were true? Would you think that Hungarian people would give their trust to this party 7 continuous times in 10 years if these allegations were true, that there would have been systematic corruption, anti-democratic stance and dictatorship? Do you think that Hungarian people are not mature enough to make their own decisions?
Isn't there a simple truth here in Hungary? you, on the one hand, say that the Brussels establishment, and you always speak of it as though you're not part of it, but of course you are, you always suggest the Brussels establishment is in the pay of George Soros. You've just said to me that you believe Jean-Claude Juncker is controlled
That's my position,
by George
That's
Soros.
what I think. You're right.
And yet you never talk about leaving what you must regard as a completely corrupted organization. And the reason you do not is that Hungary relies on the billions of euros sent from the cohesion funds and other funds into this country every year. You both want to say you're not part of this union, and at the very same time you are one of the chief beneficiaries of this union.
I think it's an extremely important point which you raise now, because this is another very unfair accusation, not the way you put here now, but how it is usually portrayed. Why? Number one, we are part of the European Union and we will be part of the European Union. But in the European Union now we are part of the solution and not part of the problem, and we contribute to the success of the European Union. Why? Yes, we got European funds here. But this is not an outcome of generosity of Western European friends of ours. This is based on contracts, and this is a two-way street. One way is European funds coming here. The other way, we have opened our market. And you know how many profits Western European companies have gained here? And do you know the fact that 70 cents of every euros which come to this country in forms of European funds going back to the western part of Europe? Did you know that? And my question is that if you know it, and if other representatives of distinguished media know it, and if Western European politicians know it, why don't they say it?
On the other hand, there are the specific questions that come with the flow of cohesion funds into this country. Now, OLAF, the internal auditing organization of the European Union, has looked over years at the way in which your government has spent the funds, including on street lighting across this country, including on improving water services. And last year it said because of systemic failings and corruption, it wanted 280 plus million euros returned to Brussels because it had been misspent in this country. How much of it have you returned?
In this case, I only can refer to you to the Prosecutor General's office, because these kind of issues should be investigated by them. And they have investigated these issues. So
how much
they have to be.
I mean, you're the foreign minister. You must know how much has been returned.
But you are not quite aware of the governmental structure here, because EU funds do not belong to the foreign ministry.
And of course not. But you go to Brussels all the time. It's very important you have a positive relationship with Brussels. So how much has Hungary returned?
Once again, ask it from those colleagues of mine who are responsible for that.
So you sit here as an accountable foreign minister of your government. You won't tell me?
Yes.
Is that a reasonable position, given that this is money paid for by taxpayers across the European Union, which has been abused and misspent inside your country?
No, come on. Again, you put accusations and allegations on my country which I have to reject. Because,
well, they're not my allegations.
You quoted them.
I quoted them exactly, but they're not my allegations.
In a way which is not fair. Because in this country, the Prosecutor General's office is the responsible authority, body, entity, to investigate such kind of issues. And if they find no crime, then I have to reject these kind of allegations which you quoted, with my respect.
It is philosophically interesting, as you put it, to see that Hungary is determined to reshape the European Union from within, which I guess explains the strong political relationship that your Prime Minister has developed with Marine Le Pen, with Matteo Salvini, with the
what kind of strong relationship
government
you
in Poland.
Speak about Madame Le Pen and Prime Minister Orbán? What time did they meet last time? Can you tell me? I mean, what are you speaking about?
Have you not been listening to what your own Prime Minister has been saying about forging an alliance of all those in Europe who are opposed to immigration? He has said in the last few weeks that as far as he's concerned,
but you say that there's a tight relationship, but I think that if you have a tight relationship with someone, at least you have to meet sometimes, right?
But this is ideological. I mean, he's talking.
I think it's practical to meet with someone, not ideological. It's practical.
Did you not actually hear your own leader say that all the forces who are adamantly opposed to immigration in Europe should fight together in this European election to create a new movement, a new bloc?
What we think is that it would be necessary and it would be beneficiary on behalf or for the European Union that anti-migration forces would get the majority in the European Parliament and then in the European Commission as well. This is our position. And this is our hope, and that's why we are working for, to have the best possible results reached here in Hungary, to contribute this aim to become, or this target to be completed, that anti-migration forces will have the majority in the European Parliament as an outcome of that in the European Commission.
Is this your way of saying that after the May elections, you in the Fidesz party will no longer be part of the mainstream conservative EPP
group? We want to remain part of European People's Party.
But all those anti-immigration forces that you are talking about, Mr. Salvini, the Polish nationalist government, they are not part of the EPP. Jean-Claude Juncker has just said that in the future, your party Fidesz has no place in the EPP.
Oh, it's not him to decide, but it's not him to decide. That's one opinion, but it's not him to decide. If I can just refer back to a long time ago, 2011, I even remember that the debate about migration had been there within the European People's Party, but it was, not that, let's say, loud, because at that time we didn't have this influx. But the debate was there because we debated about whether migration is the right answer for that time already existing labor market and demographic challenges in the European Union. Our position was no, migration is not the right answer, find some other national answers. And there were parties in the EPP which said, yes, they think migration was the right answer. So this debate has always been there.
Now, one way in which the EU is going to change very soon is Britain leaving, Brexit.
We regret that.
Do you want the EU to offer more and new concessions to Britain to ensure that it does not leave with no deal?
Any change to the current position of the European Union must be made by a unanimous decision of 27 countries. I assume it would be very complicated to open it and change it in a way that can be closed by the 27 as well. But I mean, I don't know, we are just only one of them, so of the 27, so let's see.
There has been a description of Viktor Orbán's Hungary as in the vanguard of illiberal democracy. And at times, Mr. Orbán has embraced that notion of illiberal democracy. And we've discussed different aspects of it in this interview. Are you proud to sit here and say that Hungary believes in illiberal democracy and wants it to spread throughout Europe?
No, we believe in democracy. Because we are a democratic country, we are democratic people. Prime Minister Orbán is, I think, the only European politician who has run all the national parliament elections from 1990. He won 4 times, he lost 4 times, he always stayed, he was always accountable. He has never escaped to supervisory body of Russian energy companies, he was always here, he was staying for his citizens, and he was accountable. So from this perspective, I think he's the most democratic leader within the European Union. Now, what he said about illiberal democracy, I think it's very unfair towards him and towards the country, not to quote it properly. What he said was that we are kind of fed up with the approach that if it is not the liberal parties to win an election, then they immediately consider it as non-democracy. So if you wish, our democracy can be considered as an illiberal one because it is not the liberal party to rule. And I think it's not fair that the liberal parties always try to portray countries as non-democratic if they are not in power. That's what we mean under this expression. I hope I helped to understand.
I suppose my thought is you want to see your form, your style of politics and democracy spread wider in Europe.
Well, actually, we are responsible for Hungary, so don't put too much burden on our shoulders. We are for a strong European Union, but we think that to get to a strong European Union, we need to have strong member states. So we do not really, we do not absolutely agree with the approach that the weaker the member states are, the stronger European Union would be. Our approach is that the stronger the member states are, the stronger European Union would be in the future. But that's a very heavy debate, and I think this debate will be with us for a pretty long time.
Péter Szijjártó, we have to end there, but thank you very much for being on HARDtalk.
Thanks a lot. That was my pleasure.
Thank you.